Hi, my name is Ben Williams, and I'm doing a video research over Alexander the Great. Um, I'm basically just going to cover Alexander's life and discuss at the end if he was truly great or if his father was the great one. So, to start off, Alexander the Great was known as the greatest conqueror from the olive groves of Greece to basically the dusty roads of India. He brought Eastern and Western cultures together, which forever changed the world. He was born in Pella, which is located in northern Greece, and he was born in 356 BC. He was born to King Philip and also to Olympus. And King Philip was quite the man's man. He was a rough rider, like a soldier, a heavy drinker, an excellent fighter, and a ruthless politician. He created Macedonia by bringing together nations that were just crazy and had leaderless tribes. He was a military genius as well and conquered most of Greece with brute force and diplomacy, basically. Um, Alexander did learn a lot from his father. He learned a lot of military skills, which really paved the way for Alexander the Great. Um, it paved the way for him to be as awesome and a great conqueror that he was set out to be. Now Olympus, on the other hand, she she was um, she was a character herself. Uh, his mother claimed that she had been impregnated by the Greek god Zeus, and this all took place when Zeus took the form of a snake to do this act. Now, this is pretty crazy to most people, but I think this story, this tale being told to Alexander the Great ever since he was a little child, definitely played a major role later on in life as he's conquering these nations, these different places, and ruling over them. I think it comes later into his mind for him wondering, am I really just human or am I a legitimate god? Um, Alexander was fascinated by this tale, and throughout the rest of his life, he would wonder if he really could be more than human. Not only did his parents have a great impact on this small boy, but also his teacher did as well. Luckily for Alexander, throughout his childhood, he was taught by the remarkable Aristotle, which loads of people would be amazed to be taught by Aristotle, us knowing who he is now and knowing how great he is now. Um, but uh, when when Alexander the Great was a young boy, he left home to study with Aristotle for 3 years, and then he returned when he was 16. Now, however, when he did return, he came back to find that his father had basically kicked his mother out of the house and had remarried and then had another son, which is, of course, going to threaten his throne. Obviously, this is going to anger Alexander quite a bit, and it's going to force his relationship with his father to be quite different from here on. Um, it forced him to argue violently with his father, eventually causing Alexander to go into exile for a little while. The two did reconcile, and Alexander did come back, but it would not be for long, and unfortunately, it would not be the same ever again. However, in 336 BC, Philip and the royal family were all gathered to celebrate the wedding of one of his daughters, and then that same night, a man came in with a knife and ended up delivering a mortal blow to Philip, obviously killing Philip. The guards thinking about Philip solely immediately killed the man. If they had probably thought a little bit clearer, they could have potentially found out, captured the man and just found out who had sent him, if this was on his own account or if someone had paid him or whatnot. I think that is really just for our own uses. I'm really curious to find out why this guy did this. There's obviously a lot of theories out there. One of them was that Olympus, who had been kicked out of the royal palace or whatnot, hired this man to do this. There's also the theory that this could have possibly been an ex-lover of Philip, which on a side note is really startling if you've never read about Greek history before, to just start reading all this stuff and finding out how people were just so freely come and go with different partners of both genders. Quite shocking, especially with our own culture. But nonetheless, that is one of the theories that it was an ex-lover of Philip's. So they could have found out who the murderer was, but unfortunately they didn't. Alexander then was made king of Macedonia, and at the age of 20, he became king, which is extremely young. He set his sights on the longtime enemy, Persia. The reason he did this was because just 100 years prior, Persia had actually attacked and destroyed the city of Athens. I guess he read that through history and just really had a hate for the Persians. One of Alexander's greatest ways of being such a commanding leader was his fearlessness, almost to the point of being reckless. We'll discuss this here in a little bit as well. He was very charismatic. I don't necessarily know that he was so great in everything that he did, but he was. He was a cheerleader, and I know he would probably hate to hear that, and you may as well. But he could really get his troops to do anything he wanted. Alexander takes his army that his father has built up and goes to Persia. He meets King Disarus. I hope that's it. If not, I apologize. He meets the Persian army there, and he is outnumbered, but quickly came up with a plan. What he used here was nothing revolutionary. He basically used the anvil and hammer, where he brought up his troops and then basically flanked them with the side. This was something that his father did. This is something that people have done in the past and have done now. This is something that influences our militaries now. And so this is something against Alexander the Great. He didn't do anything that great in this instance. However, he did beat them, and he beat them pretty bad. Alexander's attitude towards defiance is either join me or die. He actually demonstrated this through his march, conquering all these cities. He showed this several times. He has 2,000 Tyrians crucified to show his might, his power, just to basically warn other cities to surrender. After that, it was the next stop was the city of Gaza, where Alexander killed every man in the city, just to prove a point, basically. His brutality was the reason for his great success at the beginning. Now, however, we do run into people or groups later on where he is more merciful, and you can see where that is actually helpful to him because it ties in his culture where he joins the East and the West. Next stop is he takes his army, which was 30,000 men, through the Hindu Kush, which is terrible mountains. He added Persian men at this time to fill the ranks of his army, which was not very popular with his men, obviously. From the research that I did, it was actually, there was a lot of racism between Greeks and Persians, and this was not very popular with his soldiers. At the banquet, one of Alexander's men, Clitus, said that all of Alexander's glory was due to his father. Um, and of course, Alexander at this banquet is a little drunk and unfortunately kills Clitus. And so this is just showing that this stood out to me as he really has this thing against his father. He wants to be the greatest. He has to be the greatest in his mind. He's got this thing where he thinks he's more than human, so he has to do this. And when anyone, even his own people, someone who was very close to him, Clitus was a friend of his. When you speak against Alexander the Great, he will kill you. At this point in Alexander's life and his crusade, people start to believe that he's becoming a tyrant. And so by his 8th year of his campaign, Alexander the Great has conquered Egypt, Persia, and a lot of the peoples of Central Asia. He stretched from Greece to Afghanistan, like modern-day Afghanistan, which is mind-blowing when you look at that on a map. When you get on Google Earth, it's pretty crazy. This is actually 2 million square miles. Once again, it's just mind-blowing. The next battle, this is my absolute favorite, his next battle was with India, with the Indians, and they were a little bit different than everything he had taken on. They actually had 50,000 men compared to his 30,000. They had 200 war elephants, which I'm sure at that time just looked scary. I mean, unbelievably scary. Alexander the Great, once again, evaluated the situation, came up with an excellent military plan, which he had been taught, and came up with a way to defeat the Indians. Now, when he did do this, what happened was he did not kill them. He did not crucify them like he had done in the past. He actually just let them be, which, fortunately for him, they saw his kindness in the whole ordeal, and that influenced their culture. You go to India now, you see statues of Indian gods, but they are posed in Greek poses, and that is completely due to Alexander the Great and what he did there. However, while he was there, while he was continuing to go his route, obviously the weather in different locations in the world completely different from your home. So monsoon weather, rains, torrential downpours, all this weather takes a toll on Alexander the Great's army, and they pretty much are psychologically just wore out. Macedonia just didn't have weather like this, and it turned out to where the men basically just dug in their heels and refused to go anywhere else. The men refused to go any farther, and so he decided he was going home. However, he took a much different way home than he came with. He punished his men almost by taking them the long way home through the desert. The end result of that is not good for Alexander the Great. Thousands die. Less than a third of his army survives. And we can see that he really just does. He believes that he can do virtually anything, whether it's defeat armies with elephants, whether it's take on the Egyptians and destroy them, which he didn't do. This is another thing. When he did go to Egypt, it was lovely because they had seen what he had done. They had crucified people and just slaughtered all the men. So they just gave up and said, "Hey, we'll be your friends." And so he was like, "Awesome." And they basically made him a pharaoh. They gave him the title of pharaoh. And you could see artwork in Egypt today that lines the walls of tombs and that are dedicated to Alexander the Great. Sorry, I actually accidentally forgot to put that in there. However, when you conquer Egypt, who at one point was the superpower of the world. You're conquering Persia, your longtime enemy. You think you could do anything. He never was defeated, and so you think you can do anything. And so he travels through the desert, killing majority of his army. Well, he finally ends up back at Babylon, uh, at a little banquet. Just one night out of the blue, strangely falls ill with a fever, and 11 days later, he ended up dying at the age of 32. Now, a lot of people think that his men, some angry men, might have killed him. This is possible. However, I do not think so. I think it was luck of the draw, I guess. I don't think he caught some kind. I've heard theories that he caught some kind of Asian flu, just some kind of disease in all these different places. But I would think that if he had it, someone else would have had it in his as well. Although he did kill everyone else in his army, so um, I think it probably was just destiny for him to die at that moment. Um, now, now that he is dead, I want to discuss, and I know this video is running long, so I'll have to apologize, but there is just way too much good content to discuss with Alexander the Great. We have to discuss if he was really Alexander the Great, or if we should be saying Philip the Great, Alexander the Continuer, or Alexander the little kid that's going to keep things going. He didn't really do anything inventive. He didn't redefine war. He did not do anything special. He was taught from the get-go. He was a very lucky individual to be born into a family where he could learn things, where he could learn things that the normal Greek is not going to learn. He learned tactics, military tactics. He learned all kinds of a wealth of knowledge from Aristotle. He just had all this stuff at the end of his fingertips, and he had this rare opportunity. When his father died, he left him this giant, massive, awesome army. And so he took all that knowledge and all that physical strength and just took off doing it. Now, I do think Alexander is great. I think he should be Alexander the Great. And I think that is because of his character. I know he did some really terrible things to people and even his own army. But however, he did some awesome things. He'd basically do anything that he would ask his troops to do. He was always in the face of danger, riding into war, riding against war elephants. He was there. He got to know the men, even the low-level soldiers. He knew them by names. He knew their problems, their concerns, their situations. He listened to them. It wasn't I am your ruler, although he did act that way sometimes. A lot of times he didn't. And this made his men actually have a care for him, a trust in him, saying, we're going to go do this, and we trust you completely. I think that was one of the key points of him defeating so many people, especially when you're up against 30,000 men to 50,000 men plus elephants, or the entire nation of Egypt, you know? I think with men that are confident in their leader and are confident in themselves, they are willing to do anything. They're willing to die and break their necks for you. And I think that Alexander the Great captured this. Between him being charismatic, being a great leader, a great speaker, a person to make you believe in one thing, a man who had a vision for victory and the expansion of his own kingdom once he grasped it. He is great, and he proved it. And we can see now throughout history, not only in our textbooks, but history that is still around, that are on the walls and are on structures, and people speak about him. People like Napoleon, people like Julius Caesar want to be him, and they cry because they are not as good as him. And people steal his body because he is great. So yes, I think Alexander the Great is every bit of that, and like I said, this is a 20-minute video, but there's really way too much good stuff to just leave out when it comes to Alexander the Great and a research video. So, thank you very much.